Imagine you and your sibling grow up knowing that exactly $1 billion awaits you at your 21st birthday. Initially, it sounds like a dream come true. And yet, for the Inman twins, partial heirs to the mammoth Duke tobacco fortune, yes, that Duke family as in Duke University, that billion-dollar inheritance became a personal nightmare. As their father struggled with drug addiction and cycled through marriages, Georgia and Patterson Inman endured horrors that wealth couldn't shield them from. Behind the grand facades of their multiple mansions, the twins faced unthinkable abuse. Forced to play Russian roulette by their nannies, physically tortured in scalding baths, and locked in their rooms at night. Their education was neglected, their development stunted, and their childhood stolen, all while they remained heirs to one of America's greatest fortunes. By the time they reached their anticipated 21st birthday, the twins would discover that even their billion-dollar birthright was more mirage than reality. Therefore, in today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we'll share the shocking true story of how two of America's would-be wealthiest twins became its most pitied heirs. In order to understand both the immense wealth and monumental tragedies of the Inman twins, partial heirs to the colossal Duke family fortune, we must start at the beginning, where the wealth flowed like a river through generations. Yet, unlike the hydroelectric currents that James Buchanan Duke had harnessed to build his empire, this flow of fortune brought not just power, but profound destruction in its wake. The story began in the tobacco fields near Durham, North Carolina, where Duke, born in 1856, transformed a modest leaf trading business into an industrial colossus. By 1890, at merely 33 years old, he assumed the presidency of the American Tobacco Company, his mechanized production methods revolutionizing an entire industry. But tobacco was merely the beginning. Duke's penetrating gaze had fixed upon another source of wealth, the untapped potential of hydroelectric power. In 1904, he established the Southern Power Company, later known as Duke Power Company, extending his influence from the smoky realms of tobacco into the very electrical currents that would power the New South. When his daughter Doris was born in 1912, newspapers heralded her as the richest little girl in the world, a title that carried with it both privilege and burden. The Duke residences rose like American castles. A mansion on Manhattan's Upper East Side, the summer retreat of Rough Point in Newport, and the sprawling expanse of Duke Farms in New Jersey. Yet within these gilded walls, James Duke was planting seeds of paranoia that would flourish long after his death. The inheritance that passed to Doris, estimated at $100 million in trusts, equal to nearly $2 billion today, seemed to carry with it a curse of isolation. She married James H.R. Cromwell in 1935, embarking on a 2-year honeymoon that led them to Hawaii, where they built their sanctuary, Shangri-La. But even paradise could not guarantee happiness. The marriage dissolved during World War II, and a series of high-profile relationships followed, including liaisons with Duke Kahanamoku, Errol Flynn, and General George S. Patton. In 1940, tragedy struck when her only child, a daughter named Arden, lived for just a single day. Yet beneath the surface of this narrative of wealth and loss ran another current, one that would eventually merge with the mainstream of the Duke fortune. Nannerline Holt, the great-grandmother of Georgia and Patterson Inman III, and the woman whose marriages would forge an alliance between the Duke tobacco empire and the Inman fortune, emerged from Macon, Georgia in 1871, her destiny shaped by both the fading gentility of the post-Civil War South and an iron determination that would propel her far beyond her origins. As the daughter of Judge Thaddeus Holt, she possessed not only the expected graces of a Southern belle, but a shrewd understanding of power that would serve her ascent through America's industrial aristocracy. Her first strategic alliance came in 1890, when at 19 she married William H. Inman, an Atlanta cotton merchant whose wealth had weathered the agricultural depression that ruined so many of his contemporaries. Their union produced a son, Walker Patterson Inman, in 1894, but William's death in 1902 left Nannerline a young widow, though not for long. Within 5 years, she had secured an even more advantageous marriage to tobacco titan James Buchanan Duke, a union that would fundamentally reshape the trajectory of the Inman line. Walker Patterson Inman Sr., raised in the shadow of his stepfather's empire, embodied the restless energy of America's jazz age elite. He pursued modern obsessions, aviation, radio technology, fast cars, with the same intensity that marked his social life. His contribution to the first successful transatlantic shortwave radio broadcast in 1921 demonstrated technical acumen, while his highly publicized 1929 divorce, complete with testimony about Prohibition-era excesses, revealed the darker elements of privilege. Yet Walker Sr. found his footing within the Duke business machinery, serving as both a director of Duke Power Company and a trustee of the Duke Endowment. His second marriage in 1951 produced Walker Patterson Inman Jr., Skipper, born in Florence, South Carolina. But fate dealt the family another blow when Walker Sr. died in 1954, leaving his 2-year-old son to navigate the complexities of inherited wealth without paternal guidance. Skipper's early years foreshadowed the turbulence to come. Orphaned at 10 by his mother's death, he came under the guardianship of his aunt, Doris Duke, whose own complicated relationship with wealth and power offered little stability to her young charge. As he matured, Skipper's life became a study in contrasts. Blessed with enormous financial resources, yet plagued by personal demons, he cycled through marriages and battled persistent substance addiction. Doris Duke's death in 1993 added another $7 million, equivalent to around $15 million a day, to Skipper's considerable fortune. His fourth marriage to Daisha Inman produced twins, Georgia and Walker Patterson III, in 1998. These children, destined to inherit an estimated billion-dollar fortune upon reaching 21, represented both the culmination of their family's extraordinary accumulation of wealth and a new chapter in its troubled dynasty. Their story would prove that vast riches, rather than insulating from life's hardships, often amplified them in ways their ancestors could never have imagined. Born in 1997, Georgia Noel Lahi Inman and Walker Patterson, Inman III entered a world of stark contradictions. By age 4, these heirs to the Duke tobacco fortune, children who would one day inherit nearly $1 billion, struggled with severe speech delays and couldn't grasp the fundamental skill of holding a pencil. Their father, Walker Skipper Patterson Inman Jr., secured sole custody when they were just 2 years old, setting in motion a chain of events that would transform their inheritance into a burden, their childhood into an ordeal. The residences that housed the Inman twins stood as testaments to the facade of wealth. In Wyoming, behind the grand exterior of their estate, the children endured nightly confinement in their rooms, forced to relieve themselves in corners. In South Carolina, another mansion concealed similarly squalid conditions. These weren't merely houses, they were stages where wealth and deprivation played out their grotesque drama. In 2001, Walker Jr. married Darrell Inman, adding another character to the tragic narrative unfolding within these walls. The violence that permeated their daily lives took many forms. Georgia would feel the impact of a baseball bat, Patterson would be pushed downstairs, and their father's own hands would strike Georgia's face. But perhaps most chilling were the actions of their caretakers, nannies who forced the children to play Russian roulette, transforming a game into an instrument of terror. Their education, like every other aspect of their lives, existed in a realm of profound neglect. After second grade, their schooling devolved into what could barely be called homeschooling, a revolving cast of tutors with no teaching experience attempting to fill the void where structured learning should have been. The twins' development faltered in this educational wasteland, their potential buried beneath layers of systematic neglect. The machinery of child protection creaked into motion more than once. In South Carolina, the Department of Social Services received 3 separate complaints, each one a red flag signaling the distress within the Inman household. Yet the investigations yielded nothing, disappearing into the labyrinth of bureaucracy and influence that surrounded the family. The twins would later speak of their father's method for handling such inquiries, direct bribery, using the family's vast resources to purchase immunity from oversight. The rotating cast of household staff bore witness to these daily degradations. Some attempted to provide comfort to the children, but their presence was as transient as everything else in the twins' lives. High turnover among employees meant that stable adult relationships remained elusive, leaving the children adrift in a sea of temporary faces. The Duke Inman fortune, which had originated in the tobacco fields of North Carolina and grown through the electrical currents of hydroelectric power, now generated a different kind of current, one that flowed through the lives of these children, creating not light or progress, but shadows where childhood should have bloomed. Walker Patterson Inman Jr., skipper to those who knew him, lived his final years as he had lived all the others, in stark contrasts. He sailed the waters on his yacht, Divine Decadence, cultivating the image of a sophisticated gourmand and collector, his vessels filled with fine foods and rare weapons. The gleaming steel of his gun collection matched the glinting edges of his carefully curated knives and swords. He fashioned himself an adventurer, a free spirit, an explorer. But beneath this carefully constructed facade lurked the familiar demons that had haunted him throughout his life. In 2010, at age 57, Skipper Inman's body was discovered, another victim of methadone, the substance that had promised salvation from addiction but delivered only death. He left behind 12-year-old twins, Georgia and Walker Patterson III, whose lives had been shaped by their father's paradoxical existence, heirs to unimaginable wealth, yet victims of unconscionable neglect. The death of Skipper Inman triggered a seismic shift in the landscape of wealth and custody that surrounded his children. Their biological mother, Daisha Inman, Skipper's fourth wife, emerged from a decade of forced absence to reclaim her role in their lives. The courts, which had stripped her of her children when they were mere toddlers, now reversed course. In August 2010, for the first time since their infancy, the twins returned to their mother's custody. But as the legal machinery churned, it unearthed horrors that had festered behind mansion walls. Tales of scalding baths emerged, alongside accounts of physical torture. The South Carolina Department of Social Services would later confirm what many had long suspected, formally finding that Darrelly Inman, the children's former stepmother, had indeed physically abused them in 2011. The press descended upon the story with voracious interest, christening Georgia and Patterson the poorest rich kids in the world. The phrase captured the cruel irony of their circumstances. Here were children who stood to inherit a fortune that would have dazzled even the most seasoned of Wall Street financiers, yet whose childhoods had been marked by deprivations that would have shocked the conscience of any poverty-stricken neighborhood in America. Behind the mahogany doors of corporate boardrooms, titans of finance maneuvered through the labyrinth of the twins' inheritance. Citibank and J.P. Morgan, those towering bastions of American banking, found themselves locked in bitter combat with Daisha Inman over control of the vast fortune. When Daisha moved to direct $29 million toward a sprawling Utah ranch, the court's swift intervention highlighted the tenuous nature of her grasp on the children's wealth. As the twins entered their teenage years, their voices began to emerge from behind the veil of privilege and pain. By 2016, the unified front of the twins' legal battles began to crack. Georgia, perhaps seeking closure, moved to end litigation against their former stepmother, Darrelly. Patterson, however, remained steadfast in his pursuit of justice. This divergence marked yet another chapter in their complex saga, as armies of lawyers descended upon the case, their briefcases bulging with motions and counter-motions. Their 21st birthday arrived on the 23rd of October 2018, with the weight of expectation. But like so much in their lives, this milestone proved more complex than it appeared. The inheritance that had cast such a long shadow over their childhood remained tangled in legal complexities, the full access they had anticipated still beyond their reach. Even worse, reportedly, the actual sum they would likely receive was not even close to $1 billion, with many saying it would be closer to $60 million US, if that. But the machinery of justice continued to grind forward. Georgia Inman's motion to disqualify the law firm Grimmer Davis and its attorneys from representing her brother in Wyoming's consolidated trust cases revealed new fissures in the siblings' relationship. When the Wyoming court's special master recommended the firm's disqualification in March 2019, it marked yet another turn in their labyrinthine legal journey. By April 2019, Georgia had taken an unprecedented step, filing a malpractice claim against her former attorneys at Grimmer Davis. The claim spoke to alleged damages to trust assets, another chapter in the ongoing saga of wealth, power, and the complex web of relationships that had defined the twins' lives since childhood. The legal documents, filled with dense paragraphs of judicial language, told a story not just of alleged professional misconduct, but of the persistent chaos that seemed to follow the Inman fortune like a shadow. And then, silence. Like so many stories of wealth and power in American life, the public narrative of the Inman twins faded from view, leaving questions unanswered and resolutions uncertain. By 2025, the children who had once captivated the nation's attention as the poorest rich kids in the world had vanished from public sight, their current circumstances as carefully guarded as the fortunes they stood to inherit. The absence of verified information about their whereabouts, activities, or financial status served as a final, fitting chapter to a story that had always been at its heart about the complex relationship between wealth and privacy, power and protection, inheritance and identity. And now we'd like to see you in the comments. Were you familiar with the Inman twins' history or the Duke family overall? We look forward to hearing your thoughts. And thanks again for joining us for another episode of Old Money Luxury. Cheers. Until the next episode.